Hey everybody, Yogi here, doing well. Hope you're doing well. This is going to be part 2 of my going through concert ticket stubs because the weather outside is frightful, but there is no fire inside because I don't have a fireplace. We were into the 1990s, so we're going to continue with part 2 now. And the first concert that we're going to talk about today is Living Colour and Urban Dance Squad. Living Colour. They were promoting, 1991, I think it was Time's Up, their second full album. Urban Dance Squad, they had that one song, A Deeper Shade of Soul, yeah. That's the only thing I knew about them. So I didn't really give it an A, even though Living Colour was great. Didn't know much about Urban Dance Squad other than that one song. And it was a good show. $18.50 for that one, general admission. Good show. Living Colour, one of the great band in my opinion. Corey Glover, Vernon Reid, Will Calhoun, and the bass player. What's his name? I can't remember his name. Doug Wimbish. That's his name. Great band. Great band. They're still going. Next concert was at the Central Park President's Room, soon to be the Rave. Lynch Mob and Steelheart. Lynch Mob, George Lynch, obviously Dokken had parted, broken up, which the writing was on the wall when I saw him in 1987. I'm like, those guys ain't going to be around that much longer. Went and saw Lynch Mob, thought it was a great show. Steelheart, good band, good album, good debut album. Lynch Mob was touring for, I believe, the first album here, Wicked Sensation. They were good live. Yeah, good show. This next one here, Bad Company again, the Brian Howe era Bad Company, and Damn Yankees. It was like a co-headlining thing. 1991 Mecca Auditorium, $14.50. Bad Company, they were okay. I would have preferred to see Bad Company with Paul Rogers, but I never have and never did. Probably never will because I don't think Bad Company is going to tour anymore. I don't know. Damn Yankees, great band. Ted Nugent, there's people that love him, people that hate him. But the Damn Yankees were a great band. You had Michael Corleone on drums. You had Jack Blades bass lead singing, and Tommy Shaw from Styx. Jack Blades from Night Ranger. Queensryche. Suicidal Tendencies. Interesting choice for an opener, but good. So this is 1991. This is the Empire Tour, when Queensryche were at the top of their game. 1950 for that one. Had pretty decent seats. They ended up filming that show as part of their Operation Live Crime VHS box set that came out a little while later. It was a great show. Queensryche was awesome. One of my favorite bands of that era. Too bad what happened to them, with the falling out and everything. But Clash of the Titans, $10 for a lawn ticket. Alpine Valley. I honestly, I don't remember who was in this concert. I think it was Alice in Chains opened up. Didn't even get in there in time to see Alice in Chains. Megadeth, Slayer. The show was all right. I gave it a B+ at the time, but yeah, I don't remember who the whole lineup was, to be honest with you. I do remember hearing Man in a Box when I was walking up to the gate, so pretty sure they were on that show. Next one, during Summerfest, Marcus Amphitheater, Warrant, Trickster, Firehouse. Warrant was touring behind Cherry Pie at the time. Trickster had come out with their debut, and Firehouse came out with their debut as well. Good show, Warrant was pretty good. Pretty solid back in the day. All right, Metallica, the Black Album, no opening act. 1991 Bradley Center. This is when they exploded, folks. 2.5 hours of, closer to 3 hours of just heavy metal heaven. Can't say anything bad about that show. It was a great show. How much were tickets? $22. Now, if you want to see Metallica, it costs you $2,200. So 5 days after seeing Metallica, I went and saw Rush and Eric Johnson at the Bradley Center. Rush was touring for Roll the Bones, and Eric Johnson had, what was his big album? La Viva Musicama, and that was a great show. So That's all I can really say about that one. It's Rush, man. They always put on a good show. And to have somebody as awesome as Eric Johnson open up, there you go. Eric Clapton, May 16th, 1992, at the Bradley Center. That was a Tears in Heaven. That's when that came out, and he was having his resurgence. We were way, way, way up and way in the back. We were in the boondocks for that show, but I got to see Eric Clapton. So this is the one I was just talking about as far as Clash of the Titans. Clash of the Titans, the weather wasn't that bad. This show was the worst show. Skid Row. So Skid Row wasn't at the Clash of the Titans. This was a little bit later. We had lawn seats. It was May 23rd, 1992. The weather was awful. So I put on here, it says rain or shine on the ticket, and I put or shit cold, because it was shit cold that day. Bad. I don't recall who opened up for him, but it was just the weather ruined the concert, in my opinion. I shouldn't say U or, F or terrible grade. The bands came out and played. It's not like they canceled the show because it was too cold. It was okay. Summer, Metallica comes back around at Summerfest, Marcus Amphitheater, and this time they have Metal Church with them again. They have a different singer this time. The late Mike Howe is now fronting Metal Church. And it was a good show. Metallica brought it, Metal Church brought it, great show. So then I went back to Alpine Valley, and then I saw Ozzy Osbourne again, No More Tears tour with Ugly Kid Joe and Slaughter. Gave it an A. It was a good show. Ugly Kid Joe was touring. They had their hit, I Hate Everything About You. Slaughter, they had their, their album with Fly to the Angels and Up All Night and all that stuff. So that was July 3rd, 1992. And how much was that one? $17.50. So still pretty good on the prices for shows. Next one is Extreme, band out of the East Coast, Boston area. Was big fan of their first three albums. They kind of made a comeback with their last album. Was given really good reviews for Nuno Betancourt, one of the better guitar players. Saigon Kick opened up for them. And they were touring for their Three Sides to Every Story album, or disc. And Saigon Kick had The Lizard, which was their big disc album with All I Want, and Love Is on the Way. Love is on the way. Yeah, that song. Next one, I went to go see Paul McCartney at Milwaukee County Stadium. $32.50 for that ticket. Oof. He made a killing that year. This was his Off the Ground tour. This was his first time being back, as far as I recall, since being a Beatle. So it was hyped, but it rained all day. And finally, right before the show, it stopped. And luckily it did, because they were having issues and they almost postponed the concert or canceled it. But yeah, it was a great show. It's Paul McCartney, man. Next one I went to go see was Sting and Dada at Summerfest. This was 1993, the following year. Didn't know much about Dada, didn't care much about Dada. Sting, though, big fan of the Police, one of the bands I wish I would have seen. Even in 2007 when they came back out for One More Turn, I wish I could have saw them. Sting was awesome. I gave it a B+ because it was Dada. Next one, Metal Mania 7. I do remember some highlights about this was Body Count, Ice-T's hardcore band, was there. And when he was there, when they were performing, the front lighting rig at the front of the stage started falling. And, Ice-T's on stage like, lift it up. And people caught it, and they were lifting it back up. So it's kind of cool to see that happen. Other things, I got King Diamond's autograph. As far as bands, I don't even know who else was there. I can't remember anything else besides seeing Body Count and the King Diamond signing. Speaking of King Diamond, the next concert is Merciful Fate. Wasn't really a big Merciful Fate fan back in the day, but Metallica kind of opened me up to Merciful Fate and King Diamond. I was more of a King Diamond fan. I liked his solo stuff. I think it was In the Shadows was the tour. I don't recall who the opening band was, but it was a good show. The next concert, Primus. I don't know who opened up for Primus. Once saw Primus at the I think it was Eagles Club Ballroom. Yeah, Eagles Ballroom, $18. They were touring for, I think, Pork Soda was the name of the album at the time. Good show. Primus puts on a good show. The next one, White Zombie. This is when they were just blowing up. 1993, La Sextrico. Oh, I'm probably butchering the name of that album, but that's the one with Thunderkiss 69. And I came and saw them at the rave. The funny thing about this show was when they first started, they had just got rid of their drummer who played on that album, and they replaced him with a guy from, I believe, Waukesha for a little bit. Or Madison, somewhere from Wisconsin. They had a guy that was drumming for them briefly. And he was at this show. And when they came out, they had these flash pods that went off with smoke. And it was so smoky in there. For most, I would say probably the first 3 songs, you couldn't really see the band on the stage. Because the rave was pretty small. I mean, it holds probably about 1,500 people, maybe 2,000. But it was very, very smoky for the first couple songs that I do remember. Then I came back and saw Primus again a couple months later. This time they opened up for Rush at the Bradley Center. Rush came back around for Counterparts, was that tour. Primus was touring for Tales from the Punch Bowl, maybe? Anyhow, the interesting thing, I gave it an A, but the interesting thing about that night is Primus was on stage for probably 20 minutes. And that was it. I don't know if they were having issues, but they played for like 20 minutes and they were gone. And then Rush came out a little bit later, did their thing. So went and saw Rush next. After that, we went and saw Pantera in Crowbar at the Eagles Ballroom. At this point, Pantera had just come out with Far Beyond Driven. It had just hit number 1 on the charts. So that's I think that was a first for a band as heavy as Pantera to have an album come out on the charts and hit number 1. So seeing Pantera at that time, they were kicking it, they were crushing it. Crowbar, not a fan of. No disrespect to Crowbar, I just don't know anything about them. Didn't really get into them, listen to them. The next one was a upcoming band who's now pretty darn big. They don't tour that much, but this show was a great show. It is Tool with Flaming Lips and Failure. Now, Flaming Lips I only knew because of their song She Don't Use Jelly. And Failure I did not know at all. So the first 2 bands wasn't really into. I was really into Tool because of Undertow had come out, and you have Sober, you have Prison Sex, all those good songs on Undertow. So that was a great show. And then I went and saw one more time Metallica. I think this is the last time I've seen Metallica. 1994. Marcus Amphitheater, they were just coming around doing it was kind of like a greatest hits thing. They weren't promoting any albums or anything at that time. Yeah, just kind of a greatest hits. I don't know if they had people open up this time. I think they did. I think they had Danzig and Suicidal Tendencies opened up. I think, because I remember Mike Muir from Suicidal Tendencies doing the show on a couch because he blew his leg out or his knee out or something. So they brought him out on a couch and he did the show on singing, like laying on a couch or sitting on a couch. All right, the next one was like a bucket list band I wanted to see, and I finally got to see them once. Pink Floyd, I would have liked to have seen the original lineup, but this show was at Camp Randall Stadium. This was for the Division Bell. I believe it was 1994. Yeah, I'm pretty sure it's 94. This was another one. I don't know what it is with outdoor shows, but it rained all day. And I think it kind of rained a little bit during the show as well, but it didn't put a damper on the show. It was a great time. This one I didn't pay a darn thing for. It was a free ticket. Doobie Brothers and Foreigner at the Eagles Auditorium. I didn't grade this one. 1994. I'll give it a B. It was good. Foreigner, they was still Lou Graham in the band. And Doobie Brothers, their hits. I wasn't a huge Doobie Brothers fan, but I do know a bunch of their hits, Blackwater and listen to the music and all that stuff. But Foreigner, I was more of a Foreigner fan. So to see Foreigner was nice with Lou Graham because, he's not in the band anymore. The next show, REM at the Marcus Amphitheater with Luscious Jackson. Luscious Jackson, I knew one song of theirs, Naked Eye. REM, big fan of. This was the Monster Tour, 1995. This is kind of like their breakout album. Or actually, I think Green was, but this is when they were really popular, in the mid-90s there. So, got to see REM live, which was cool. Great show. I don't know what to think about this guy. I did kind of like his first couple of albums, but the band who opened up for him is the band I wanted to see that night. And that band is Marilyn Manson and Clutch. This is the only time I've seen Clutch live, and I regret not seeing them since because they are an excellent band who doesn't get enough credit. Listen to Clutch. I mean, just give them a listen. They're a really good band. So Marilyn Manson, this was 1985. This was at T.A. Vern's, a place called T.A. Vern's, a little nightclub on the northwest side of Milwaukee. Marilyn Manson had just released their Portrait to the American Family album, I think, and Clutch had their second album out, which is just titled Clutch. The stage was really, really small. I mean, Clutch had like no room. Clutch was good. Marilyn Manson was... I don't think we stayed for the whole Marilyn Manson show, to be honest with you. But he kind of creeped me out. He was weird. But, yeah, so went and saw Marilyn Manson. So this next one is some local bands. Well, this one band had a kind of a national following. Mortiscald was at the Rave, 1985. I was drum teching for the band who opened up Harrispex. Chris Kinjerski was the drummer. I just kind of helped him out that night, kind of drum teched for him. So it was kind of a cool thing to be behind the stage and stuff and see. I mean, it wasn't a packed show by any means, but Mortiscald had kind of a following. The next show is at the Rave, and it is Vince Neil, Motley Crue, headlining with Warrant and Slaughter. I gave it a C+. Vince Neil, not a good vocalist. I am not a Vince Neil fan. On albums, when you're tracking and stuff, he does fine. But he just can't seem to reproduce anything live. Do I like the albums? Absolutely. I like, Too Fast for Love, Shout at the Devil, Theater of Pain somewhat, Girls, Girls, Girls somewhat. I liked Dr. Feelgood. My favorite Motley Crue album, and this might offend some people if it does, keep it respectful in the comments, but you can comment below and tell me what your favorite Vince Neil or Motley Crue album is. My favorite Motley Crue album is the 1994 Motley Crue album with John Corabi on vocals. That album, to me, that is a good album. They shouldn't have called it Motley Crue. That was their mistake. They should have called it something else. But to call it Motley Crue, it doesn't sound like a Motley Crue album. Well, yeah, it does kind of. But then again, you're talking grunge was popular then. So they were changing, bands were changing to try to stay relevant. But in my mind, John Corabi did a much better job on one Motley Crue album than Vince Neil. And again, it's no disrespect to Vince Neil's vocals on the album. It's just that he can't do it live. And I've watched videos of this stadium tour, this last stadium tour. Embarrassing. This guy, I don't know. Just not a fan. Okay, next one. This is a weird one. The Cranberries and Cracker. Now, Cracker I liked. They had a couple hits off their album Low. And I think it was called Kerosene Hat, the album. And they had Low and Get Off This. So they had some pretty good songs. The Cranberries, they were popular at the time. I think my brother got these tickets cheap, if not free. And they were pretty good seats because he worked for a beer distributing company at the time. So he got really good seats to these shows. Saw the Cranberries and Cracker. Gave it an A because it wasn't bad. It was good. This next band, such an underrated band. King's X. Great band. Galactic Cowboys, they're a pretty good band. Super 8 didn't know much about it. I think I ended up buying their album or their CD and liked it. But King's X, such an underrated band. A band that should have been way more popular than they were. They're still together. They're still touring, but a great band. This was under Ear Candy. This was when they were dropped from their record label. Was it Atlantic Records, I think, at the time? But they were going around for one more round, you know, doing like a thank you to the fans. But they ended up continuing and still play to this day. So great band. Rockstock. This was at Alpine Valley. My brother got tickets through this. We got passes. We were able to go upstairs into the and get food and drink all day long. So here's the pass, the laminate pass that I have from Rockstock VIP. And here was the lineup. Such an eclectic lineup. This lineup was insane. It started out with Pat Denizio from the Smithereens, who was unfortunately Smithereens, great band, great American band. He's no longer with us. Then a band called the Nixons. I remember like one song of theirs. Then there was Everclear. And, you know, they had Santa Monica and some other songs. AM Radio. Seven Mary 3, Cumbersome. Everybody knows that one. Soul Asylum. Cheap Trick. Candlebox. And then Typo Negative. You talk about a band that doesn't belong there. And I didn't stick around long enough to see Typo Negative, but later in life became a big fan of Typo Negative and wished I would have seen them. The moment I remember about Rockstock is, you know, there's just probably about 20,000 people there at this gig. And they had a side stage too. And I believe I was watching Space Hog. That they had one hit called In the Meantime. And I think I was watching them on the side stage. But we were up at the top of the stairs coming down into the venue. And it was warm. You know, it was September. So I thought it would be a really cool idea to pants my brother. He was wearing shorts. So I was behind him. So I came up behind him and I pulled his shorts down to his ankles. And he's standing there in his underwear, man. And he turned around and gave me a look to this day that I'll never forget. And I was always waiting for him to get back at me somehow, some way. He never did. And he has since passed away. So it's a crazy, fond memory to have. But yeah, I have memory of that. So the next ticket we have here is ZZ Top and Reverend Horton Heat at the Eagles Auditorium. ZZ Top, you know, they're who they are. At this point, the 1996, they're kind of fading. They're not as popular as they were back in the 80s and even the 70s. But they were really good nonetheless. Reverend Horton Heat, there's an album of his that I really, really loved at the time called Liquor in the Front, Poker in the Rear. That's a great album, and they were great. They were great. I gave them a B. The sound was really bad. The Eagles Auditorium is notorious for having terrible sound. And it just happened to be an off night for whoever was mixing that night. Next concert I went to see was called Q101's Twisted. This was at the Rosemont Horizon down in Illinois. Rosemont, Illinois. Again, it was another eclectic mix of bands. And the bands were as follows. Fiona Apple, Sheryl Crow, The Wallflowers, Weezer, Gravity Kills, Stabbing Westward, Violent Femmes, and Korn. So that was the lineup for that show. It was good. I don't recall seeing a whole bunch of stuff. So this one here is Korn at the Eagles Ballroom. This is when they had hit it big. I think this was their second album, Life is Peachy. They had Helmet and Limp Bizkit open up for them. Limp Bizkit was just starting out. Helmet they had their either first or second album out at the time. In the Meantime by Helmet was a great album. But went and saw Korn, and then after that show, members of Korn were walking around. Actually, before the show, members of Korn were walking around, so I got to say hi to Fieldy, the bass player at that time. And then after Limp Bizkit played, they came out and they were walking around, so I saw Fred Durst and John Otto, talked to them briefly, you know. This next one is 1998, and this is the last one. I'm pretty sure this is my last entry in here. ELP, Dream Theater. So Dream Theater came on first. ELP, Emerson, Lake and Palmer, and then Deep Purple. And that was at the Marcus Amphitheater Deep Purple was touring for an album called Bananas. But Dream Theater came out. I had known about Dream Theater. I think that was the first time I saw them. I've seen them twice. So that was the first time I actually saw them. They didn't play for very long. And then Emerson, Lake and Palmer, one of my brother's favorite bands growing up, had an effect on me because I ended up listening to them through him. So Emerson, Lake and Palmer, I got to see them once. Sadly, Keith Emerson and Greg Lake are no longer with us. But it was nice to see the actual lineup of ELP. And then Deep Purple, honestly, I don't even recall who was in the lineup at this point. Might have been Steve Morse on guitar, Roger Glover on bass, Ian Gillan was still singing lead, Ian Pace. John Lord might have still been, I'm pretty sure John Lord was probably still the keyboardist as well. So, yeah, I think that does it. Holy cow. I've seen concerts since then, but I just haven't held on to them. Another thing that I had that's pretty cool is I went and saw The Darkness. Big fan of The Darkness. Love this group. Went to see it with bandmates at the time. It was for the Pinewood Smile tour, I believe. It was at Turner Hall Ballroom. And at the end of the show, I went up to the stage and I was like, you got any set lists or picks or anything you want to throw out? And he just threw me one of these. I don't know which band member it is, but that is what I have. I also have a couple other things that are really it's kind of sentimental to me. One of them I can't find though, and it's really irritating me. It's a signed Frehley's Comet first album, and it's got all four of the band members who played on that album. It's got their signatures: Ace Frehley, John Reagan, who has passed away since, Anton Fig, and Todd Howrath, I think was his name. I got it through my friend Randy. He was working at Mainstream Records, and Ace was doing a signing at the time for a show that we went to see that night. It was Ace Frehley. Y&T headlined, Ace Frehley was second, and then the third band was originally supposed to be Guns N' Roses. But Guns N' Roses got popular, and they pulled off of that tour, and I think it was Faster Pussycat that opened up that show. I don't have that ticket stub. I mean, there's a lot of shows that I could talk about that I don't have ticket stubs for, but it's kind of cool to show you the ticket stubs. And then there's one of a band from Milwaukee called The Frogs. Now, The Frogs, they're not your typical band. They are very, very risque. If you're interested in looking up their music, look up their music, but don't say I didn't warn you, because it's very, very risque. A lot of the stuff that they sang back when they were doing this will be taken as offensive or racist or flat out. They have a huge following, though, in the musical community. People like Eddie Vedder, Jimmy Corrigan from the Smashing Pumpkins. Well, Eddie Vedder's from Pearl Jam. A lot of bands loved this group and respected them. And Pearl Jam even had them open up for them at Summerfest when they played here in, I believe, 1995. So the Frogs, it was only two guys that did most of the stuff, Jimmy and Dennis Fleming. But Jimmy's still around. Jimmy lives in, I believe, Austin, Texas. He occasionally does one-off shows doing the Frogs with Evan Dando of the Lemonheads taking over the part of Dennis. Dennis played the drums, and Jimmy played guitar. And then they had like a touring bass player. But Dennis also was an accomplished keyboardist, and he actually went out and toured with the Smashing Pumpkins on their Melancholy and the Infinite Sadness tour. He was out there doing keyboards for him for a while. So they were well loved and respected in the musical community. But their songs, again, they're hilarious, but you have to have a very open mind and not be offended by everything to listen to their music. So if you're that kind of a person, take a listen to the Frogs. They're really good. Very underrated. The recordings aren't the greatest. A lot of them are like 4-track recordings. They did do an album with Jimmy it was called Star Job. It was produced by Billy Corrigan from Smashing Pumpkins. That's probably their most or their best sounding release. But yeah, the Frogs, great band. I have a signed both of their signatures on one of their albums. A flap or a flat. So enough of my yapping. Maybe I'll do this with bands. I don't know, bands I've been in. If you folks like it and you think, you want to see what kind of bands I was in, what kind of music I played and stuff like that, I'll do it. Thanks again. This is going to be a long episode. I'm sorry. But I hope you stick through and check out all these bands that I've seen. And if you've seen any of these bands or are fans of these bands, comment below. Let me know. I'll interact with you. We'll talk. That's going to do it for this episode of Road Trips with Yogi. Please like, share, subscribe, comment. They're all free to do. But if you want to help support this channel, you can become a member on the YouTube, my page on YouTube. And you can also become a member at Patreon, www.patreon.com/Road Trips with Yogi. I laugh because the 3 W's, they just say it fast, www. Say it like that, but if I try to say it slow, it sounds really weird, and I'm concentrating too hard. So it sounds goofy. That's going to do it for this episode of Road Trips with Yogi. Again, folks, I hope you enjoyed it. I'll get out there and start doing some more road trips once this weather, we've had 3 snowstorms now in 4 days. This one's the worst by far. I mean, we're supposed to get 14 inches of snow. So I know we're no Buffalo or Cleveland, but that's a lot of snow regardless. All right, folks, until the next episode, take care of yourselves. Be good to each other, and I'll see you next time. I'm out of here.